Yeah, deal with the puppies. We'll see you later, Sam. Hello, Joshua. The good people are gathering. How's it going in the mountains?
Pretty good, man. Just got down to town yesterday, filled up the propane. It's raining this morning, and I got them to take my generator that broke back, and they gave me a new one. So that was awesome. I shamed them into it.
Whoa, good. Yeah. Hope you get some heat up there.
Yeah, that would be nice.
It's a cold time of year. Yeah. Yes, Sam had to deal with some dogs that were very lively. So.
Okay. How are you doing over there, Glenn? How's everything? Is Stacy here too?
Yeah, Stacy just has the camera off.
Hi,
but
Josh.
She's with us.
Okay,
I'm just
great.
not feeling that good, so I just want to like lay down and close my eyes.
No problem. I just wanted to I just wanted to know who's in the room and say hi. And I see your camera's off, and I'm not feeling very good either. So I hear you on that one, Stace.
Ooh, that's bad that you have to be outside in the cold then. That would be hard.
Well, it's because I like trying to wake up. I woke up with a stiff back because it was so cold. Like well, you know how when you're under the covers and you're all like trying to stay huddled, like, you know.
Yep.
Yeah. So I woke up and I was like, oh my God, I've been in that same position probably for like 6 hours, like all twisted up. So I just got to untwist.
Haven't seen you for a while, Glenn.
Yeah. How are you, Glenn?
Yeah, it's been happening so much because I've been having this day job and I'm been going to these other meetings with this Gurdjieff people and lots of stuff. So time just flies along. But now it's finally holidays. So today I'm actually home alone for once, and that's my girlfriend's visiting her family. So it's a peaceful evening, but yeah, I'm glad to see all you people from around the world. I mean, so I'm here just with the cat, and yeah, but I've definitely been reflecting also upon many of the previous conversations, so I'm sure we'll get into a lot of interesting things today. So,
well, Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah.
Yeah, we're putting up Christmas, my decorations. My girlfriend's she likes to find things in the woods and put around. So it's but it's actually a couple of weeks holiday for me now. So really looking forward to just taking it easy, having some time to breathe.
Happy holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays. So are you doing anything special for the holidays, Josh?
Yeah, I got a menorah and I got the candles this year because last year I didn't light them. We missed the Hanukkah last year, so I've got everything ready. I usually have a non-Jewish Hanukkah party. I invite all my non-Jews to come and celebrate the Festival of Lights.
Wow. How many people come then?
I don't know. I invite anyone that wants. Like we usually only have one token Jew, just because it's a non-Jewish party. But then that's only one of the nights. There's 8 nights, so on the other nights we have actual sacred celebration. But usually on the 4th or 5th night, I like to have a non-Jewish Hanukkah night, so other people can share the traditions if they haven't, or if they do. Some of them just like it. They just like spinning the dreidel and eating the food and saying the prayers and lighting the candle.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful tradition. I like it. grew on me as
Yeah.
I grew up.
It's so interesting with those traditions and those periods. You can kind of fill them with a lot of meaning, depending on how you.
Hello.
So Alex is with us. Good to see you, Alex.
We're waiting for Sam. He's got what did you say, Glenn? The dogs or something?
Yeah, there was some puppies in the background wanting some attention, I think. Alex, how's it going there?
I've retired. I'm on my retirement hours now.
Whoa. So you're like a senior citizen.
Yeah. I'm looking for my audio settings so I can change the volume, adjust the volume. Selecting mic.
Well, Glenn, feel free to host. I'm going to be quiet. I'm turning my mic off, so I'm leaving the hosting to you.
Yeah, I mean,
Or Alex, if Alex wants to when he gets his mic going. I'm just saying until Sam gets back, I'm just going to be quiet.
Yeah, I haven't got anything special prepared for today, but just sort of could talk about anything really. But obviously, it's all kinds of ideas could be shared, like if it's interest for it. But I mean, you can go in any direction really. But maybe you have something, Josh.
Yeah, I was just going to say, my friend from Chinese medicine school invited me to a Korean Buddhist temple. Sorry, the wind is picking up. It was absolutely amazing. I'll put some pictures online. It was just a beautiful temple that they built in the mountains to create a bell called the peace bell. And when you ring it, it does the special tone that goes down into another jar underneath the bell, and then it reverberates back up into the bell and back down, and then all through the canyon. This canyon was like shaped like a bell. So it's to bring peace into the world, and it said peace etched in the steel of the bell in every single language. I've never seen that many languages. I didn't even know what half the languages were, but it was beautiful. So when you ring it, it rings out the energy of peace in all those languages throughout the world. And it's the bell is bigger than me. It was about 8 feet tall and huge and a giant thing. It was really fun to ring that bell. I really enjoyed it.
It'd be good to get those languages copied out. I believe there's nearly 200 countries, or over 200 different countries in the world as well. And everyone.
I'll send it to you, Alex, if you'd like. I took a picture.
Yeah. Some lucky person in every country, one of those 200 people, will be the local Bioscope entrepreneur, web page facilitator.
Well, we had Google Translate, and that we didn't get very good cell connection in that canyon, just because it was up in the mountains about 20 miles from where I live. I didn't even know it existed. My friend, her Chinese medicine school went there for overnight stay, and she missed it. So she wanted to go there, and she said, it's only 20 miles from where you live, which is an hour and 45-minute drive over the mountains. But yeah, I will definitely send you a picture, because I was fascinated by all the languages, if you're interested, Alex.
Yeah, language is such an important thing. We are the language animals, aren't we?
Yep. You can read my website in any one of 150 different languages with Google.
One of the things, though, that's often coming up, I guess, is the way people understand. Yeah.
What percentage? what percentage of the internet are reading and writing in English? It'd have to be
On
pretty
the
high.
internet, it's quite
It'd have to
high.
be, yeah. You've got Canada, Europe, most of Europe, United Kingdom, Canada, United States, Australia, New Zealand, a lot of islands.
India too.
Yeah. And
India's second national language. First is Hindu, but second is English. So a lot of Indian people speak English.
so that's a lot of English. That'd be a lot of the traffic on the internet.
You can look it up on Google. It gives you the percentage of who speaks what language throughout the world.
I'm talking about when you've got a web page, you're deciding how many languages you want to interpret it for the world. Well, if 95% of your customers are speaking the same language, that's a pretty important one to have as the default. Yeah, the default is occurring on the internet in a lot of ways, not just in language. This default ad service for people making Amazon shopping sites.
Are you saying kind of that things can go into a pattern and they sort of stay in that pattern for a while? Is that sort of
They
what
do.
you're talking about?
Yeah, they do until they're influenced by an outside force, like an algorithm, like a server, a fake news server, or a corporation as big as Amazon or Google or Apple, fighting over ad servers, fighting over the data. It's a data bottleneck.
Yeah. Joshua.
I was going to tell you, Alex, I posted a video from 6 years ago on this exact subject from a guy at MIT talking about the different languages on the internet throughout the world and how many people are only searching 20 to 30% of the internet when you're searching in English. So there's a whole nother internet out there in Glenn's language. What's the name of your language, Glenn?
Well, it's Norwegian. So it's very similar to Swedish and Danish. So we can certainly understand each other, even though Danish is sometimes a little difficult to understand when they speak. They have it depends, but it's very similar. Yeah, but it's a lot of English, obviously. Yeah, Josh.
If you were doing a Google search, do you search in Norwegian? And does that bring up the Swedish, like some of the words cross over in the spelling when you're doing the actual query?
Yeah, it depends. Quite often it will be in English. I mean, most of my notes are in English, even idea notes. I have like more than 1,000 notes in Evernote. Most of it is in English, but some in Norwegian. But I don't know, it's for whatever reason, I just have moved also, using English for sort of ideas. But yeah, so it's a kind of a mixture, right?
Yeah, I would imagine it would be depending on what you're searching for, because there might be some philosophical or non-technical writings in Norwegian that you might also want to search. So I'm curious if when you're doing the search, if you do a long tail keyword search in both English, Norwegian, maybe French, maybe Spanish, to find the best information, or even Portuguese for the Brazilian information, because there's a lot of really intelligent people in all those languages. So I used to use a web browser plugin called Copernicus that would search in all the languages.
Yes.
So,
yeah. Well, another challenge, of course, is about languages is that there's certain of these more, let's call them abstract concepts. And that's where it seems so clear. I think it's been shown in these conversations that people understand the same words in so many different ways. So that's an interesting thing as well. So I'm sometimes wondering if language can evolve, if we can have a picture form language, sort of like a cartoon. Hello, Jaswinder. Good to see you. Yeah, it's just some ideas I've been having. Like, what if we could evolve language in a way where we can put in what we have, and then we can have like cartoons that can be programmed also by computers that can transmit more accurate language, that you're really clear about what you mean, because you can. Yeah, what do you think, Josh?
I was going to say it already exists. I'm happy to show it to you.
There's some tribes communicating with noises like clicks instead of nouns and synonyms.
Josh, you always say that. When I have an idea that's really big, you always say, that already exists. And it's probably right. Yeah.
It's just because we've had the internet now at a high functioning at Web 2.0 version since 2002. So it's 18 years of a couple billion people trying to figure out these things. So, you know,
okay, but why are we using the QWERTY keyboard? Like, why haven't we evolved these basic structures?
What do you think this is?
That's what I'm trying to tell you. Go ahead, Alex. Sorry.
I said, what do you think this is? Our communication methods have evolved, and now we're using technology. So there you go.
Yeah, something's happened. But like, for example, the keyboard, that's interesting. We're still using the same keyboard that we did 30 years ago, the QWERTY structure, and I don't think it's a very impressive keyboard. That's an interesting question. Like, why haven't we evolved that 1,000 times already? I mean, we use the keyboard all the time.
It was good while it lasted, but even though it's still being used, it's a legacy piece of device, because now we don't need it. You've got a virtual keyboard on the screen if you want to pick letters and type on your phone.
Go ahead.
Try not to talk over each other.
No, Josh, go for it.
So Glenn, if you have your iPad, you can download an app on your iPad in the iPhone store, iPad store, and it's called Keyboards. And there's one that's actually called Google Keyboards. And then you can switch the keyboard on your iPhone or iPad to whatever keyboard you want in many, many different formats and layouts. It's called Google Keyboards if you go to the App Store.
Well, that I will. Google Keyboards. Yeah, that would be very useful.
Also, if you go to YouTube and type in what you just said, is why is QWERTY keyboard the standard and still that today? There's a very wonderful 30-minute documentary going into the history of who invented the QWERTY with the typewriter, how it evolved, where it's at today. And it was, I think, done about 2 years ago. There's a great documentary on that subject. So, yeah.
I have a couple of points here. First of all, I don't think there are 2 billion people talking about what we're talking about. I only see 4. Secondly, if you're talking about the evolution of language and standardizing down to one language, it's not a new idea. It's a very old idea. There is a language which is ready to go. It's called Esperanto. It was put together by Europeans, to my knowledge, 40 years ago or more. I became aware of it 40 years ago, and people were trying to espouse the usefulness of Esperanto. And as you are no doubt aware, computer technology was just starting to make inroads into everyday life. Some computers were available, although very expensive. Calculators that could do calculus and sine and tan and cosine They were made by Texas Instruments, extremely expensive, but available. The question that arose out of all that was who benefits? You know, if you go and talk to, for argument's sake, the Jews, the Punjabis, the Germans, anybody who has a distinct language, why should they change? Language and culture are interwoven. Body language and particular cultural body languages and culture are interwoven. And as Alex has pointed out, some people talk in clucks. Nothing wrong with that. They don't need any more. Why did language evolve in the first place? This is what we're looking at. I'm not being sarcastic, no sartorial, but this is a Western point of view. This is a privileged point of view that we want to standardize everything and we want to metricate it so that it suits us. Now, this may be all very well in the future, but currently, not a lot of people want to do that. Certainly the French started a movement in the 80s, 90s, where it was a nationalist movement. They wanted to retain French as they become members of the EU, and they didn't want to be subsumed language-wise either. French is a wonderful language as far as I know. I don't know any language which isn't wonderful. I don't know any language that does not have the basic mechanisms of grammar, humor, duality, the whole caboose. And it's kind of like religions, you know, the big religions, they all have the same sort of things, but in different configurations. And they all espouse the same sort of, but in different configurations. We are technologically advanced, so we want a language that's technologically advanced. And yet we use Latin and Greek because they're dead languages in our technology, in our advanced education. Why? And they make up new words. Every day there are new words, not just in the everyday usage, the slang, but I'm talking about scientific terms. And are they scientific? So if Glenn found, for argument's sake, a new species of a monkey, they could be named after Glenn or Garsland or whatever name he wanted. That's extremely scientific. You know, science is there to explore, and yet it's become a demigod. Bridge, Joshua, you're upside down. I'm about complete, Josh, if you want to jump in. Otherwise, Alex is ready to go.
I was just going to say, you missed the very beginning before you came in. We said exactly what you just said, and the conversation started because of a video I posted 6 years ago.
On GCC last week, or somebody else posted something about languages. Nothing new.
Probably me. That's what I was signaling. Yeah, I posted a rant about this, and then Alex brought it up, and then we're all saying the same thing. We all agree. It was me.
So what then about the misunderstandings? How could those be transformed, I guess? How could those kind of encounters lead to a development of understanding? For example, obviously I'm thinking about the sharing of ideas in public. Yeah, Alex, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, I'm thinking about English plus. You know how you have C+, it's a programming language, but we've got English spoken language, human languages. We could have English plus, which is modified English that's infused with some brilliant insights of enlightenment and pathfinding tools, pathfinding algorithms. So You don't have to settle for, but if you want to boost the evolution along, you can do that now. You need friends. You need friends.
Absolutely nothing, because the ultimate language is 0 and 1. The hard drive, when you put something down on hard drive, you have the damn thing has sectors on it. So each sector will either have nothing or a 1. You could have a whole sequence of 1s, and it means something on the screen.
And that's called?
Binary.
Binary.
So the 1 is that it's on.
It's
There's
3.
a transistor that's turned on at that point, right?
There's a 1 or a 0.
And moreover, Alex, you're probably aware of this, chips work on posi drive. You can only go through a chip one way, and either the gate will be open or closed. Posi drive. If it's closed, it has to go to the side, left or right.
Okay,
So
well, I have a
the
question.
ultimate language is
on, that gives it 3 options, doesn't it? On, off, or sideways.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So
There
I got a
are
little.
There are always only 3 options. We toy about the fourth one. We call it, what do we call it? Sorry about interrupting you, Glenn. Free will. It makes me laugh my socks off. If I've got free will, why can't I stop breathing?
But you believe there's nothing in the universe. You believe nothing exists. But if I gave you a tag,
that's nihilism.
If I gave you a tag with a piece of string on it and I wrote nothing on that tag, what would you tie it to?
And if you didn't have nothing, Alex, we've had this conversation before. If you did not have nothing, something could not have come into existence, because it needs the nothing to live in.
That's a circular argument. It works.
Whatever you want
forwards.
to call it.
It works forwards and backwards.
Have destruction without a little bit of destruction, vice versa.
Yeah, it works both ways. So it's like stating the obvious. Sorry, Glenn.
Well, maybe it does work both ways.
You know, all these little things you've got in
but
your
it's
head.
Like maybe it works both ways. But
or it's circular. You can put them all in a cocked hat. Nature does not work like that. Those are superfluous.
Maybe it is circular. Maybe it's supposed to be circular, because if it goes on forever, if it's always, I think that's what jazz is getting at. I like to think of it as if there had ever been nothing happening in the sense of movement at any place, then that would have remained like that forever, because nothing could have begun. But the fact that something is moving and has been moving as far as we know indicates that it's actually been moving for an eternity, for real. And if, is that what you're getting?
The so-called Big Bang, we have no idea how long the nothingness stood still. You know, you could argue silly things like, well, time didn't exist. That's of no relevance. Eons and eons and eternities could have passed before that bit of nothingness did the first split into whatever, a binary split into 2, for argument's sake. And
there's
then
the black hole where you limit your knowledge limit beyond that time existence.
No. Those came much later. This is way back. And then the question would arise, for argument's sake, if those 2 bits that have split into 1 into 2, if they were to split in half the time that the original split would have taken, would that be half an eternity?
But that's the funny thing, like all our concepts they have a totally different meaning when you take in eternity.
So think about at our our way of looking at things and saying, well, this is the only way it can be. And we've got the proof, and they haven't got a dicky bird. All yours, Alex.
I think if nature came along and discovered nothing somewhere, it would make something. It would have to. Nature
Well,
abhors a
where do you
vacuum.
get this idiotic idea if nature came along? What are we? Are we not nature?
We're
Are you
nature.
not nature?
Yes.
So there is a lot of nothing in us already.
Yeah, yeah, but
Nature
before the
found it. Nature found it. Nature is using it every day.
before the solar system,
Joshua, I think you have something to add.
No, continue. I just wanted to check in because I know Stacy's here. She's probably about to turn it off, and I don't know if Sam is like, oh, I'm afraid to come back. So I just wanted to check in with other people, but otherwise continue. I just wanted to pause for a second before we go too far on a tangent.
Josh, I was just typing in the chat, but I'll say it. Sam just wants to convey his apologies that he's dealing with a puppy visitor and he's talking to his son about something. So he can explain that further. And I'm just listening because I'm not feeling great. But thank you.
Well, I'll try to tie it back. I will try to tie it back here in an interesting way. The way I think of it is just that it seems to indicate that there's some kind of eternal action one way or another. And I find that interesting because it means, you know, that perhaps we also are somehow infinitely deep inside ourselves, etc. And that might mean some specific possibilities. So if we just even think of the multiverse as a metaphor, even if we don't make any claims that there is an infinite eternal multiverse, but if we just use it as a metaphor, it's actually a very interesting metaphor because it makes us consider what would the other possible versions of me and of us do in other real scenarios, and what would be different possible futures from the current situation moving into the future. So this is where this conversation goes from being this very wild meta physical speculation to becoming a bridge into something possible. If we imagine and ask, what would the different versions of us be doing in the next few years? And this is where also we might get to a position where if we could evolve language, we're using all the great stuff that's been accumulated until now. We don't have to disregard or devalue any of it, any of the traditions. We could use them all. But what if we could somehow get it together so that we could transmit the best insights about the best ways of being and the best moments we've had so far? What have been the days when we've made it work? What are those moments when that person really makes it work? It's like that song is singing in them. It's that they're just, it's working somehow. Sometimes there's many people and it's just working for a certain moment. What are those moments? What if we began asking those questions? And what are the biggest dreams of the people? Yeah, Alex, go for it.
I've seen some moments occur and they were cohesive, like people resonating with a suggestion or an idea, and other people in the conversation are coming back and injecting their piece of the puzzle. And it's some of the conversations have been brilliant like that. You leave it's like leaving a picture theatre in an altered state of mind because of the impact the movie you just saw had on you, if it was a good one.
Because you were yourself an actor in the movie.
Well, that too. That's part of it. But we try not to acknowledge that part. That's the ego. That's the idea.
Well, what are you thinking about, Josh or Jazz?
And we progress. If we acknowledge those agreements, that's where we make solid progress. Over.
When we start doing this whataboutery business, did you want to say something, John? Are you rolling a joint?
I'm not rolling a joint. I'm rolling a cigarette. But if you want me to put some herbs and mugwort and marijuana in there, I can roll you a joint if you want one. I can roll you a spliff. I don't know if I have enough. My marijuana is medicinal, so I save it for my medicine. Maybe I should roll a joint for this conversation. That might make it go better.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Why not? Well,
I got work to do today. I wish, yeah, if I
but Josh, I was just wondering, do you think that there could be a connection between that, metaphor of or reality of the multiverse and this multiverse of possibility that we might, begin becoming conscious of if we focus on it, so we can sort of create a new world within the world at some point? That's kind of what I wanted to ask.
Well, I'll just roll back to my experience yesterday. I'll just share that experience of being in a Korean Buddhist temple, and the way that they drew the artwork and every, it's a religious place. So every detail of every line of every part of every carved piece of wood brings another dimension, so that when you're praying, and it's a place of ceremony, and each bell, each sound instrument, everything is designed to put you into another dimension so that you can communicate to the energy of the Buddha, of what the state of enlightenment that the Buddha was trying to give to the world. So they're trying to create that with very specific blues and reds and pinks and greens and colors laid out in a specific
what I'm getting
way.
to.
So I'm around about answering your question by saying,
yeah, because what if we develop that? What if we really develop that between people?
Joss Winder will probably back me up on this, but that has been developed for thousands and thousands of years, going all the way back even 1 million years ago they just found some amazing cave paintings recently in Indonesia. And I believe what was going on, and this is just my own personal take on it, is before they were going to hunt the animals to get food, they were imagining what type of a hunt they wanted to have and what type of an animal they were looking to get. So they were painting on the walls and visualizing the hunt either before or after or during, I don't know what the time frame, but they were drawing the dimension of reality that they wanted on the caves, and then trying to will into existence a good hunt, a good animal situation to feed their family. So I think for millions of years, for thousands, and I don't even know how long you want to go back, we have been using our human ability to visualize a dimension that we want to be in, from cave paintings to Buddhists to Catholics to Coptic Christians to Muslims to Zoroastrian, you name the culture and society, they created. I don't know if anyone here has been to it's called the Blue Mosque in Turkey, which used to be Istanbul. But if you walk into that mosque, I guarantee you'll be transported to another dimension because of the way the chandeliers come down, the entire dome of the mosque. There's 3 domes, but when you look up to the ceiling, the way the art is drawn on the domes, it vibrates your eyeballs into another dimension. So does that answer your question, Glenn? That we're already been doing it.
Exactly. These sacred places have been created. I mean, this is the knowledge this is like the knowledge that can really bring us, into a new world, if we could really use this knowledge and build on it?
The knowledge is inside us. Accessing it is the difficult part. To access that knowledge, we needed language, any language, a working language. And once we had a working language, we could start accessing that. And once we started accessing that knowledge, we started making things we call religions, started telling our stories. And religions have evolved right up to the point of starting from the basic ones of worshipping almost everything like the rivers, the sun, stones, rocks, making up stories of how we came to be, to eventually realizing, well, we're all one. It all started from something that is innate to everybody. And that all of that knowledge, even minutely, is within us. But we don't do the practice to access those banks. But we carry them forward. Every time we create another baby, it has all of that previous knowledge, billions of years of it inside. So occasionally, and this is a rarity, and there are 2 hot zones on Earth where this has happened more often than anywhere else. You get people who are born connected with that fashion, with the divine light. And then they try their utmost best to pass on that knowledge within the limitations of the language. And a lot of them, like Buddha, like Nanak, like Kabir, Jesus.
And that's where the problems start, isn't it?
What problem?
Well, when they try to transmit it, that's when it becomes difficult.
If you want to see it as a problem, yes.
I know, sorry. Yeah, you're right.
But if you want
that's a bad word.
If you want to see it as illuminating, enlightening, passing on knowledge of eons, then it's a different matter. Now,
okay, let me put it this way. Could we say that that's a moment when it's a big challenge, I guess? How can knowledge like that be passed on?
The challenge is that one of the prerequisites of accessing that information is that the practitioner has to be totally honest, especially with the self, because you're going to access the self. And it cannot, if you put lies together, then you're going to try and filter your way through the lies. You can't do it. You'll get stuck. So whatever your knowledge is, if it's not clear, if it's not succinct, if it's not trustworthy, you can't do it. You will be stopped. So these people, they've realized full well, even those with stops in place, somebody might not go all the way, but start using whatever level they get to of that higher consciousness for their own good, become extremely greedy. And that's the stage. They have given this stage a name, actually, and it's called Kali Yuga in the East. And this is the height of the Kali Yuga right now that we're in, where we don't know the truth from the lies, and people prefer to believe lies to the truth, and they want to have more of everything so that they themselves can be worshipped. In short, those practices are written down. In short, people like Islam, Sikh, Christianity, Buddhism, the Quakers, the Brahma Kumaris, just to name a few, they have those techniques. For you to access those techniques, you have to start sitting with them, the beings who gain those higher access and start becoming like them. It's kind of like if you want to be an astronaut, you have to go to an astronaut school or a solicitor or a Queen's Counsel. Then you go and do that course. And then you practice, 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 practice. It is quite simple, but it's time consuming and you have to have faith, trust in yourself that something is there. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the amount of written material, never mind the spoken material or the practices or the places of worship, the amount of written material on all of those, and I've only studied the big six, is millions of books, probably billions. And it takes a long time to cut through, and a lot of them are contaminated. It takes a long time to cut through and start putting together those bits of information that fit the puzzle and are like, and they don't take you into somebody else's fantasy. Because it is a bit like a fantasy. But that is the beauty of it. That would lead us to living in our bestest possible way while still moving forward technologically and agriculturally and scientifically. But this is again
thanks,
a big,
Josh. Yes, that was really, really enlightening. Everything
well,
you shared there.
Yeah,
I really think we're really at a sort of core place here, right? We have to see ourselves really, and it's this deep revolution has to happen and will happen, I guess. Alex, what are you thinking about?
The process of awakening, it happens to people who go through 12-step programs of recovery.
Could we say it? Just an idea. Yeah. Finish, please.
They come out the other end with a renewed sense of awareness and responsibility in the world. You know, when they
exactly.
Part of the process involves talking to another person in the fellowship, in the recovery group, about your past, about your remorse, and about, in fact, what they do is like a moral inventory, a personal, spiritual and moral inventory. They write it out on a bit of paper and share it with one of the other members. And that's a step, if you like, in the process that seems to have a profound effect on a lot of people.
Yeah, because, for example, I was thinking about today, could we say that if there's something called awakening or something called transformation or a positive development, could we say it's like a wave that it goes through people? We could call it an energy. We could call it a process. It's not really a name we have for it. We could even call it a kind of a song, but it's something that it's like a wave that of energy, we could say, that perhaps accumulates and becomes something sort of brilliant, which sometimes shows itself.
It has this funny peculiarity of being two things at once, end to end. It's like an awakening, a realization, and a letting go. You're gaining something if you let something else go. An old belief system, for example, that's one of the primary things that creates space for the awakening. They say when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. So if you're doing inner work on yourself on a daily basis with a few minutes meditation, for example, and practicing these positive affirmations, eventually you'll notice signs of improvement. But you can speed it up by using those techniques that the people in recovery groups use. You can speed it up enormously. Stacy.
I think Stacy has something. Stacy. Oh, your sound isn't on yet, Stacy.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Clear.
I think, okay.
Good
I
to
think
see you, Stacy.
I think what Alex is saying about the self-help group ties into what Jazzwinder mentioned about how important it is for the person speaking to be so clear and honest and really know where they're coming from. What the self-help group, what the recovery groups also provide is somebody that can call you on your bullshit. I mean, they know best and they could say, oh, I'm not buying that. So it's, you know, there's a few things that happen in recovery groups that tie in to what Jazzwinder's saying is necessary. The other thing that I just want to say, and, you know, Jazzwinder, I don't know how many people here believe in past lives. I do. So I believe that I've done some of this before. But the reason I bring that up is because sometimes we might say, this is the way to do something because we're assuming that somebody has been on a linear path and they haven't gotten to something yet. But what about if we're wrong and we, you know, don't, I mean, I know when sometimes I don't need words with my dog. When my child was little, he didn't speak, but yet I was usually pretty clear on what he wanted. You know, and people have different levels of skill with that. So again, we don't know, for me at least, I don't know what somebody has within them that's just waiting for that little shell to be removed. So I think sometimes it could happen really quickly if the work's been done at another time. I'm complete.
Yeah, we're all on different parts of the same journey, I remember, as Winder said. Makes me think about that.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing I want, if I could just go back to what I wanted to jump in so many times, but I really don't feel well. My head is kind of pounding. Yeah, but, you know, you guys were talking about, Glenn, I think you mentioned about showing up and all that. And I always think of it like music, you know, like imagine, you know, if you think of a song, the beauty of it is everybody can come and play their own instrument. And if they're just doing their thing, you know, the sax person, he's paying attention to the piano player, but he's still playing the saxophone. And just imagine if like we listened to a song and we all liked it, but then we said, oh, but it's good because, you know, and didn't allow each other to have their own appreciation for what they got from it. You know, so again, I think that when you were talking about all the different colors and all the different everything, each one of us, and Jazzwinder said this, even if it's really minimal, if we recognize that everybody has something, no matter how big or small it might be, it's still important to the total. And I think we forget that and we think some is more valuable, and it may be.
Each have their own song. It's like each person has their song, right? And if they sing that song, they're all over singing together. It's this beautiful orchestra.
But even
Colin,
more than
good
that,
to see you there.
But even more than that, we affect other people whether we know it or not. Josh?
Thank you, Stacy. I didn't want to talk over you. I really like what you're saying because that's how I look at our conversations is a jazz conversation. And sometimes we're playing the standards and sometimes we're just improvising and making up a song as we go. But it really, to me at least, these conversations are jazz. And sometimes we're really flowing like, ba-da-do-da, ba-da-do-da, ba-da-do-da. Now it's Jazzwinder, and it's Alex, and it's Glenn, and it's Stacy, and here comes Colin. And when we're playing the standards, meaning when we're all on the same, we all know the notes of that same song, meaning we're on the same conversation, then we can riff off of that and go off on our solos and come back to the group and then play back the standards or we're playing a song that's never been played sometimes we're on a completely new territory and we're like, oh, this hurts my ears, or oh, I like this song. So thank you for that metaphor, Stacy. I just want to say I do look at these conversations like a jazz improvisation.
Reminds me of what Colin said too about playgrounds. And, you know, we sort of have a garden and then we have a playground. So maybe the playground is where we experiment. The garden is more this long term where we store the most important or finest things. That's just what came to me. But I think it's yeah.
When I'm feeling depressed, the Streets of London song, that reminds me of how stupid it is to feel depressed. It's like having that boredom is a mental illness. And the person who's a true friend is the person who knows you, who knows the song in your heart and sing it back to you when you've forgotten it, when you've forgotten the words. That's a good one.
Yeah, exactly. They know that song. It's like your good friend. He knows that good song that's in you. Yeah. I think I like that way of looking at it. That it's like each person has their own song. So we're sort of singing it in a kind of symphony. Maybe it's a harmonious one or it's a disharmonious one. But it's a sort of symphony one way or another anyway.
I just hope it's not Kumbaya.
Yeah.
Before I kumbaya with you guys, I just want to say the ideas that we're putting out there are the theme or the melody of the song. So when we're changing subjects and passing around, it gets a little dizzying when we're singing 7 songs at once, like in the streets of London, and then someone's singing, you know, come by my, it's like too many different ideas going, like, let's stick to one song if we may. I just would ask that for
okay,
this
Josh,
conversation.
if you get any song, what would you most like to sing? What would be your favorite thing to go into now? Good to see you, Colin.
The metaphor, as the metaphor, a song being an idea and a subject to riff on. The idea that I'd like to riff on, I came here for barn raising. That was my intention of the song I wanted when I came here, but I'm
what was that
open.
intention?
I want to just hear where Sam is at with his intentions of barn raising, and I know he's preoccupied at the moment. So that was my intention of coming here, to just check in with Sam and say, hey, what are you working on, and can we help you? Because that's why I'm here, is to help raise a barn with you know, Sam's guidance. He's the one that started this Saturday barn raising. So
because this is actually a point where I think there's two schools of thinking in operation here, because one thinks that there's a barn that's being raised and that we're going to do it. Another thinks that it's the conversation where we just explore these themes, that a barn is being raised already because it's a system of ideas that's then being developed, and perhaps an understanding, so that in a sense, instead of talking about building the barn, perhaps we're already building the barn simply by exploring the things that we're most interested in, for example. And that's just, yeah. Does that make sense? Or do you think that the barn is something more specific you're thinking about? Or
I just want to hear from everybody. I want to hear, Colin just got here. I haven't heard his check-in and where he's at with what he wants. And I'd be happy to go around the room and hear what everyone else wants to do. But I'm open to whatever, either talking about it, do whatever. I'm open.
I'm open to hosting Friday sessions if sales do well. But that's not likely to happen until next year, possibly the year after.
Colin, how's the job? You're muted. Still.
We can't hear anything, Colin, for some reason. There's no sound. Is the sound off?
I think he's fixing it, Glenn.
Okay, okay.
That Streets of London song doesn't have to be London, in any major city.
But Josh, I was really curious. What would you most like to focus on? Because, you know, you should just, because
Well,
that's really what I would focus on. Like, what would you most want us to go into?
I can tell you my vibration is vibrating because of the day I had yesterday on world peace and sharing all the languages and just helping each part of the world to feel that they're peaceful. So let's hear if Colin's sound is working and see what Canada's doing and what Colin's doing and what his part of the my song I want to sing is just everybody's heart song, like Alex said so eloquently. I just want to help everybody be singing their own song from their heart. That's where I'm focused at.
Same here.
Can you hear us, Colin?
Yeah.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
Check.
We hear you.
Okay.
Good to see you,
All
Mr.
right.
Kilburn.
Just Bluetooth technology in transit, that's all. Yeah, I was chatting in with Stacy. And hi, Jazz and Alex and everybody. See you are busy there, Jazz, with the baby. Josh and Sam off on the wings, probably nursing the dogs. So yeah, Stacy, the job is pretty good. They really are a caring company, and they're how would you say, a good group of people. It's an agile type of environment where there's lots of diversity, and so yeah, it's a very welcoming space to know you have a lot to learn.
Great. Congratulations.
Yeah, it parallels with here, except for there's a few different constraints, but yeah, it's if you're sincere and serious about things, then you know you can move forward. And I know Glenn and I, we've talked about moving a ball up the road, so that's kind of where I left off as far as what I was talking about. But I told Glenn to give me a message when he's not so busy.
And now I have time for that because it's been going really hectic. But now for the next weeks, let's do it. Yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah. I think we should have a couple of meetings, maybe invite some other people that are interested in visualizing the space and see what we can come up with. Sounds like a great idea. Anyway, I'll pass
I've been
back.
thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for the question, Stacy. And Josh?
Just really happy for you, Colin. I'm very happy.
We've kind of been moving around all kinds of places, but I mean, I was very interested in this idea about how, you know, what is that song when it's, or sort of each person can play their own song. It's kind of metaphor that what's the song I most want to play, for example. And I think that ties in with this idea of profiling as well, that Colin's been talking about, and creating these maps. So I think there is an overlap, even though we're going around this. But it's like that's sort of like long-term work. But there's, you know, what specific people are most interested in. That's you know, maybe that's what will guide, so to say, what where we continue with that. and that can be profiled as well. So that's one question. I'm also thinking about, like, yeah, how do we define our goals? Yeah, Josh.
I was just going to share this with you, Glenn, is when I went to that temple yesterday, I opened up one of their books, which was in Korean, and it was translated on the right in English. And I opened to a page, and it said, "We're here to honor the names of the Buddha." And there's 36,500,438 names for the Buddha. And I thought, that's such a specific number. Why did they pick this number? And my friend looked at me and said, it's probably for all of the souls that have incarnated here on earth. So each one is the name of the Buddha. Each soul that comes to this earth is the Buddha. And I thought that was quite profound, that there's 36 billion names for the Buddha. I just wanted to share that with you.
It's probably exactly true that each person has it somewhere inside.
Just different names of the same soul, the Atma, the one soul, the true soul that is the soul of the universe, has incarnated into billions of souls, which is, from practicing Buddhism, that was the message I was hoping to share with everybody, because I thought that was such a divine, beautiful message.
I really hope you can share something about the DMT, for example, the experience there, because I had one experience with that, and that was so world opening that it feels like it's the most important things.
Well, there's trivia concerning enlightenment and psychedelics, that there's barn raising that involves teamwork and agreements. So we could have a trivia session, or we could have an enlightenment fundamentalist session, or a web page.
I think Stacey had something there too.
Yeah, okay, or a wiki page for the trivia segment.
Since we're all over, I'm sorry, Alex, were you done?
Buddhism is one, but there's how many others are there? There's hundreds of others that are just as significant. And there's what are we doing here if new members come on and find out we're just talking about religion and politics and drugs? They say, is this your barn raising? And we can say, well, yes, we're doing something. At least we're here together discussing stuff. But the topics flow, and sometimes they go off on a tangent. So we fill in the gaps, and we get a host who can keep us on track to the topic. Otherwise, we're off topic. But it is still interesting. I love the temples and the writings and the languages, especially in Tibet, in places like Thailand. Over.
What were you thinking, Stacey?
Well, I was thinking, since we're all over the page anyway, that I could say what I'm going to say, which is, so I understand, the frustration of coming thinking that you're going to sing a certain song. And I also want to go to what Jaswinder was saying about knowing yourself and the truth. Because, Colin talks about adapters, and he usually puts me in that category. And I think that's, if I had a space that I was going to, I think there would be a whole lot to talk about, just in terms of how certain people were feeling coming here thinking one thing. I'll share what I shared with Sam, and it's more of an emotional nature, but I think that that's how we learn who we are. So I did want to know why he wasn't here, because I was a little bit, I came here not feeling well, but I came here because I wanted to support Sam. And then he wasn't here, and I was kind of having feelings. Now, I'm just sharing that, not because I'm not upset. That's not what it's about. It was about acknowledging that, yeah, you know what? This wasn't the song that I expected. Once I spoke to him and, felt if I'm going to tap in deep, and that's what I'm doing, I felt respected enough by his explanation that feeling went away. I'm just using this as an example to say that it's hard to separate life from life. And when we're doing whatever we're doing, emotions come up. And we've learned as a society or whatever to not deal with those things. So when I hear Alex say, put that away, it's the ego, it kind of drives me a little crazy because we're not at that point yet. First, we have to recognize who we are, wherever we are, even when it may not look pretty. If I'm having a feeling, I may not want to have that feeling, but that doesn't mean I'm not having it. And so unless I take a second to look at it, it's not going to get transformed. So I don't know where I'm coming from or where I'm going from on this, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that I believe that Earth is the emotional planet. I believe that this is the place where we are meant to experience those emotions, and each one in a very, very unique way. And I think we keep trying to find one fit. It's not I think it's more, I think if we could create a culture where for example, if I would have just, let's say I didn't want to be here for whatever reason, then why did I stay? I need to explore that within me. And I think it's an important conversation, and there's not enough spaces to have that. But if anybody ever wants to have those conversations, call me, because that's where I bring myself. That's where, I mean, we had starting with a thread, was it Thursday? I don't know who is this. I'm not sure who is there. Thursday, oh, Glenn, that was the one.
No, I haven't seen it yet, but I wanted to see it. You said it was really interesting because there'd been this thread on Messenger right before it. Yeah, but I did read that thread. Yeah, that was very interesting.
I think thought it was the same thing. Wonderful.
But isn't that transformation sort of the common theme here then? That there's a sort of inner transformation.
The Thursday segments are on the cloud, but they haven't been transferred to YouTube.
Yeah, yeah.
But I guess, Glenn, what I'm saying is that the transformation's happening with different people at different times. And for the most part, things are labeled. So, barn raising, Josh wanted to talk about, I'm assuming what I'm getting is that Josh wanted to come here to see if Sam was working on something, and he wanted to be able to help when possible. And, that opportunity wasn't here in this case. For me, I love having this opportunity right now to jump in and say what I say. And that's not something that, maybe Colin wants to be a part of, and there's no judgment in that. It's fine. I'm just saying, that's why I said, since we're all over the place, I can do that now.
Yeah. The advantage with that, of course, is that you get this tapestry of different things collected. So, it's sort of, but I'm curious, Colin, what are you thinking about?
I'm kind of thinking about, I think Stacy mentioned a lot of it. I've been trying to keep the same focus on each person having their pet ideas and finding a way to easily share those, whether it's through profiles, maps, whatever, and having a certain curious language about us so that we can adapt to those properties if we know what value they have. I think a lot of this is not new. And if you look at the gaming world, it's a place where you have to have a persona to kind of join in to a new space. So when you play a game, you learn what value system they have in that game, and whether a player is one that you want to do whatever. Like, how do you navigate? How do you know what's attracts you and what repels you, or what the goal is? Like, what's the mini quest? So all those things are in visualizing something that's obvious, but at the same time not obvious. So how do you present that in a way that it's not too much information at the same time? It allows you to adapt to different scenarios. So it's not always the same spiel. One way I've explained it early on was you could have a song, but it might have many different genres, so that people who enjoy a certain genre will listen to it. Yeah. So it's like a song, also like, and also it's sort of like an idea of a layer that's not defined too well, because if you had good definition, you could find better ways to present it than in the tools that I'm thinking about. These are like adapters to get you in the right zone, start you out on your quest or journey, align you with other people who may be able to hear your signals without having to pick a technology and say, if you want me, I'll be on this technology, which it does come down to in the end, but that should be less of the discussion and more about what it is you want to bring, or trying to find out what it is you have to bring, or what other people have you might want to join into without derailing yourself or others, I guess. Anyway, that's kind of the idea. And it's very wild here because there's no rule set of what a boss is looking for, or you make your own guardrails. So it's a very you have the responsibility to make the best of it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And do it in a way where, as Stacy says, what you're bringing, if what you're bringing and the expectations aren't aligned, then you're not going to get the results you're looking for, even if you have a great idea. And I think realizing that people, I think generally do want to, in this space, do want to try to collaborate. That is the name of the game here. I still think the collaboration part's important, but I don't think it's as obvious as, we're the GCC, here's the steering wheel, here's our list of objectives, who's going to be the treasurer. It's not that kind of a thing. It's like more of a holding space, and then people can come and make their sub offices or pods or whatever you want to call them. And the PKE was an experiment in that. DigLife has its own thing going on. And there's 14 serious conversation communities or more that should have corridors that are more familiar, I think. Some people see them, some people don't. I don't know. But yeah, try to make the space more navigatable. So I guess that's why I want to get together with Glenn and try just to sketch out, what the town square looks like. And he's got some really interesting drawings that look to me like a funky interface into a personal knowledge management system, which would be, one of the pages of your life, and you could take another one, and this is with this context. And,
yeah,
you could have,
but I think you said it so well there, Colin. That's really an issue, right? That we come here and we're having all our different ideas, and what if it all goes in all different directions? It's sort of a chaos. Sometimes it's like, yeah, but it's kind of interesting, but it's all over the place. It's been a little like that today, so because we haven't sort of had any theme. Yeah, Alex, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking you went through that process 18 months ago with your artwork and your profiling, but I've noticed a lot of Facebook people haven't got any information on their profile for some reason. There's an aversion to sharing data. So, if you do get people willing to share their data, to do a deep dive, you're onto a winner. You've got a gem there, because data is the new gold. But the people willing to give it away probably are not doing so because they're expecting something in return, some value. And this is the difficult part. This is a difficult message to get through. We need a new marketing technique. Over.
Yeah, a two-dimensional way to look at it is, LinkedIn with a link to your profile of your work activities, blog posts, who you are, what you're doing. I don't really do that too much in this space because I'm more in the R&D world, and a lot of that stuff for me is heavily weighted more towards the offline collaboration at this point than online. You know, coming here is an experiment for me, in, you know, many things, like, you know, working with other people is an interesting thing, and learning to be understood by other people is hard to do, especially when you got such a small straw that we're using to speak to each other, a time on Zoom. So yeah, you can think of it, to me, a first level would be, in the online world, is what is it you're trying to promote, and how do I present that, and how do I make that message clear, so that if other people hear that message and they give me feedback, how do I edit that and go on to the next, you know, iteration of alignment.
Neil
So,
Davidson
you know,
had some really interesting things to say about that. Yeah, I just want to mention, Colin. Sorry didn't want to interrupt your flow,
no,
but I think it ties in
no,
with
no,
that.
no, please do. And I thought of what would be an interesting Friday experiment would be to have people who do make models and diagrams come and bring, you know, their set of 5, and, you know, have
Yeah,
their
perfect.
4-minute spiel, put them together in a row. You know, have a tool day or a model day. Heiner's got hundreds, Neil's got some. There's all kinds of people that would like to, you know, Alex has got one with the way he wants to, you know, everybody has a schema or architecture or a model of some sort, and it's nice to get that into drawings. And where I'm working with Glenn, he's got amazing sketches of interfaces to contexts, which, you know, really makes me think, you know, okay, now we're getting somewhere if we can keep our ideas into categories. Yeah. Therefore, you can join categories, much like the SDGs, the 17 SDGs. I don't think they're meant to be in isolation. They're meant to just harness in on a certain problem, and there's relations between them. So, you know, that's the thing, to take it from the abstract categorizing world into the, here's an example of this story that relates to these 3 SDGs. Or, you know, if I click these 3 buttons on Glenn's map, that'll get me to the space where whatever. And then, you know, that's barn raising. Then we have Sunday. It's more, I keep thinking it's more and more like church. Like, it's like a secular church of some sort. You know, it's you know, to hear Alex talk about the song, that's when I joined up. I've heard him say that before, and I think that really is true. A friend knows how to sing back, you know, your song, especially when you forget the words, because they know you that well, or they're willing to grow with you. So, you know, that's on one end. So there's a sprinkle of all of that stuff through this online connection with people, which is outside the normal architecture of, you know, be here between these hours, and this is what we're expecting you to have done at the end of a certain amount of time. And, you know, it's more like, how could I draw a map to make it more clear to people? If I don't get it to this week, maybe I'll get to it next week. You know, and how do I get people to give me feedback on that? It's a much different thing. I'm not looking at it to make money. So, you know, it's just like, you know, I think the GCC is trying to do things differently, and how close we get to the SDGs and governance, I think, is just a matter of people in pods, you know. Anyway, I don't want to rant, but it's, yeah.
So just to address, you know, Colin's point about, you know, how hard it is to get to know each other. And earlier we had some conversations about language and the difficulty. I think what GCC tried to do is put that time and effort into getting to know each other. But if I could just be really childlike and just say, if you guys came and told me the fairy tale character that you identified with and the song that relates to your quest in life, that would be such a great starting point for me to know who you were. And Colin, this goes to some of the things that I would talk to you about early on that I really wanted to do in terms of profiling, because I understand, we all recognize that people don't want to put their profiles up. They don't want to do this. They don't want to do that. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about why. on the deeper levels, like what are the little things that hold us back. And I think that a way to circumvent that, or to make them more fun and less threatening, is to do things like I just said. You know, show up at the meeting, tell me the fairy tale character that you relate to. That's a sort of non-threatening thing to do, but it actually gives a lot of information. So it feels like we're fine. Like, I just wanted to mention.
Yeah, I feel it's like coming back to one of the things we come back to. It's like this emergent idea of profiles, of building our own profiles. Tammy, for example, talked a lot about this. This, I think, is what me and Colin are so interested in too, and it's connected with everything Alex is interested in. It's like this idea of it's like a new database of sorts.
But I'd like to, I mean, for me personally, one of the things that I wanted to do from the beginning, but I wanted to do it with people, I didn't want to do it by myself, is find enjoyment in building the profiles, to use that as a process to get to know each other.
Yeah, I think as well, I discovered that I had a reluctance to share because I'm collecting information that people may or may not have wanted to stick around, even though it's on video or something. If someone would say something and I put that on their profile, maybe it wasn't their heart song or their main message. So, you know, maybe it was something, or maybe it was something that they said, but it was in a comment to something, and, you know, it wasn't really their,
or for that moment
thing. Yeah. And, you know, that's the idea. These things can change, like a new page. So, but what the point I wanted to make is that there's a personal and a private profile. So, and I've thought that all along, like with the videos, there should be extracted the gems that we want to make public, and the rest of the stuff is kind of like private GCC stuff that, you know, there's no reason why you couldn't share it, but, you know, what good is it actually doing? You know, give me 3 good reasons other than it's entertainment. And that might be
I
big
think
enough.
Josh has something. Josh, what do you got?
Well, I just really like what you're saying, Stacy, and what you're saying, Colin. And I just wanted to, you know, just mention a little bit of, it's not necessarily our history, but it was the practical knowledge ecology. I felt what really went wrong, at least in my own, you know, understanding of what we were doing, is we didn't get enough chances to go around the room and say, does this 100% resonate with each soul here in the room? And I think that's just such an important thing. What you were saying, Stacy, the way I heard it is, it's supposed to be fun when we're all resonating together. And if we don't stop for a second and check in with each other on each call and say, is this all resonating? Because the Bitcoin stuff and all of Johnny's Bitcoin, that didn't resonate with me. I don't want to do Bitcoin. I keep telling you that everybody that comes to me telling me about their $1 million Bitcoin ideas, I just have no desire to do that. And I do want to build new technologies and new internet and new stuff, but I don't want to do it on a platform where the person who invented it is anonymous and nobody knows who it is. I just don't feel safe with that.
What about Aaron Puttamore or Perlmutter?
I haven't talked to him in about 5 months because that's his life, is the Bitcoin. And that's why I stuck him together with Johnny, hoping that him and Johnny would go off on their thing and Practical Knowledge could do our thing, and they could do their Bitcoin thing on the side, and anyone that was interested could have that, but the group would get back to a focus. Instead, it all got pulled in that direction, meaning Johnny just pulled us all into his thing. And it was, I feel that's the real problem with happiness, resonance, culture, group building, is when one person ego takes over and we don't stop and check in with as many people as we possibly can in the limited time that we have to have a conversation. And that, I just wanted to share that my heart resonates with, okay, this is all great, but what does Cindy, the lady that's been sitting in the corner, what does she say? What does John, the guy that's, you know, had a great idea 4 months ago, have we heard John out? Like, just not even taking a chance to go around the room. That's why I think like the Alcoholics Anonymous works well, is because they have a system to go around the room and make sure everybody's stories are heard. And if that's not being done, leaves a gap open, because I've experienced this in many, like the Occupy movement and corporations and businesses. If you don't listen to everyone in your organization, and there's one person that has gold and you're missing that gold, and you didn't ask if that gold is sitting in their pan, and everyone's mining for gold, and that person has all the gold in their pan, they'll get up and take that gold to another corporation, to another group, to another culture. And when I say gold, I mean the song that's in everyone's heart. I mean, and sometimes it's a real difficult thing to do, because sometimes you have to go off on these tangents with people trying to figure it out. But if everybody helps that person figure it out, it can move pretty fast. You don't have to spend 3 months figuring out what's in someone's heart. If everybody talks to that person and helps them to communicate. Am I making sense? I'm just rambling, but
that makes perfect sense to me.
So Josh, I have one question for you. I don't want to put you on the spot. You don't have to answer now, but do you have one fictional character that you relate to? That's all I want to know. That's all I've ever wanted to know. I'm
that's
interested.
a great question.
Say it again.
That's a great question. The fictional, because I have, fictional. Let me see. What are my fictional characters? Give me a second, because I know I have many fictional characters, but I haven't really related to fiction as deeply as I should.
Yeah, and I would never put you on a spot, but that's the kind of question that I think is a good one to achieve what you're talking about, because somebody might not, like if it's a more serious question, I might not have anything to say. I might not know enough about it. I might not feel comfortable enough about it. But a question like that, to me, is a fun kind of creative question. And I think creativity is something that is universal. I mean, we are products of creation, so it makes sense that we'd want to create. So I do want to hear your answer. It doesn't have to be now, though, but I would love to. And I think it would be fun in building a profile. And I would have loved to have Colin Mack that, have our little avatars.
You know, no, you just took the words out of my mouth, because helping the person to create is what I was trying to say in my little rant there, is I want to help someone bring out that creative process in them, so that later when we need them as a group building something, we can go to that person and say, I know you're a great creator because we helped you create that one thing. So you probably have 5, 6, 7, 8 other things to create.
And if I could just add,
go ahead.
One second, because I just want to add, because this also, what happens is that process also takes care of what Jaswinder was mentioning about getting to know yourself, because it helps us, you know, if I have to think about, which character do I relate to? That's causing me to go inside and really think about who I am. So to me, it's putting all these things together in a fun team building kind of way. Go ahead, Colin, I'm done.
Yeah, so I think what I would try to propose with Glenn, and it's not just Glenn in particular, but using an opportunity with what Glenn has presented, and trying to move that idea further, put some of my energy into it where it applies, because when I look at his idea, I see my idea, you see. So, and he may see his idea, he may see his idea different than I see his idea, right? So you already got an overlap, and then you bring in somebody who's more spiritual, dare I say woo, and then you're going to get a whole nother angle on there which I can't I may be able or not able to how do you say, interact with or align with. If it's art, music, and you know, these kinds of things, I feel these things are very spiritual for me. When it comes to getting into alternate philosophies, you know, that's a button they can push, and it should be there. It shouldn't be missing just because, you know. So if we start, this is an idea, maybe just like a 2x2 grid, and start building it out. And we pick the 4 most important things, like the character you see yourself as, the journey you would like to go on, the quest, maybe a square with a couple of, like your personality type, like your little adapter section. You know, find out what the 7 main or 4 main things. And there's some other guys, there's the Ichi guide. There's some others that we could use to kind of build like a baseball card for each person who wants to start. And that could be a friendly public thing that if you put bounds on it, then they know that you're not going to go any farther than that in your mapping. And then we can refine that as we go. And
That's
maybe,
an incredibly interesting, thing to be working on.
So let's
go into it. Let's go into it, Colin.
Yeah, like
we
a
can
little
talk
art
about
project.
it a little later if you want. I really want to go into this. It's so interesting. Josh, what do you have there?
Well, I think we could do a lot of it. We could do a lot of it through Trello as well, and just messaging. Only need to have these face-to-face contacts when you're working with the whole larger context and you're trying to, converge. If you start to diverge, then you need to have a conversation. And while you're converging, you can do a lot of it with just, lighter signaling. And I'm done with that. Hey, how about this? I put this over here. So if we were like in kindergarten and you draw a 2x2 square and you tell everybody what to fill in the squares, that could be a way to start.
Josh had something here. What do you think?
I'll just riff on this. I was going to answer Stacy's question because I thought about it for a little bit, but to riff on what you're saying, Colin, is helping people create and then helping them get to the part where they feel that they actually did create something. So meaning when we go back around the room and we say, okay, it's Glenn's turn. Hey, Glenn, how did that creation go? Like, what happened? Are you stuck? Are you blocked? Are you create? Oh, wow, you did create that. Okay. And do you need more? Does anyone else want to help Glenn finish it or expand on it? And in other words, the creation process never kind of ends. It just iterates. So helping each other go through those iterations, I think that's what a group, like as a single person, I can only iterate so much to the point where I need feedback. I need other people to look at what I iterated and get their feedback so that I know, oh, it's finished, it's done. Or, oh, wait, no, I got to keep working on this. This is not even created. Like I thought I created it the best I could, but it's not the best for Joss Winder. Joss Winder needs it to look good from the back angle and the right angle. I only looked at it from the top down and I didn't see it from the sides. Oh shit, I didn't look at it from that perspective. But to answer your question, Stacy, if you want me to answer it now, I'm happy to.
I do.
So the two fictional characters I relate to, one is, well, the most fictional character I relate to is the character from the movie It's a Wonderful Life, the Jimmy Stewart character. And his need for traveling the world and seeing the whole world and then sort of getting stuck with his family, but then finding that stuckness is a wonderful life. That's sort of something in my life I feel I relate to that character of, just trying to do your best and help out the family, but also have that yearning to like do something great in this world. And then also just being stuck in that little town. I just love that character. I just find that character very heartwarming. And I forgot the name of the character, but
George Bailey.
George Bailey. There you go. Hot dog.
Gotta see that film. A wonderful.
I love George Bailey. There's a tender moment in that film, Glenn, where he's sitting with his father and he's about to go to his high school reunion. And there's a real loving energy between George Bailey and his father and the maid. And it's just a beautiful movie. I really like that character. That's one of my favorite fictional characters that Frank Capra created. I find George, and the other character is Lao Tzu, because nobody knows if he's actually real. Supposedly he was real, but he could be an amalgamation of many characters. So I do relate to the guy who's fed up with the world and says, I'm done, I'm out of here. And people grab him and say, no, you can't leave until you give us all your knowledge. And then he writes a very deceptive conundrum, 81 passages to make people think about why they want knowledge. So I really like Lao Tzu and George Bailey. That's the answer.
Thank you. I mean, to me, that tells me a lot about you.
I have to see that film. What was it called, Josh? Was it A Wonderful Life?
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's
a Christmas
It's a Wonderful
movie.
Life. And the director, I don't know if he was the writer or a partial writer. His name is Frank Capra. And he also did another one of my favorite movies called The Lost Horizon. And I really, really like the main character of that movie is awesome. Not quite as resonating with me as George Bailey, but The Lost Horizon is probably, to me, one of the best movies ever created. That it's a tie between that and It's a Wonderful Life. In all movies that I've ever seen ever, The Lost Horizon is such a great movie.
Well, yeah, I really hope I get the chance to see both of those because, yeah, and I should answer your question, Stacy. For me, it was my Superman was always my favorite as a kid. I loved the Superman movies. I remember. I even had this little outfit, but yeah.
How do you relate to Superman, though? How do your characters combine?
Well, I mean, it's for example, he's flying, and I always have these dreams of flying. Every now and then, I have these dreams of flying, and it's always like I fly like this, and I go a little bit up in the air, and then I sort of float above the ground. And it's a very strange dream, but I always had that, and I always I just really liked those films, and those were my first favorite films. I remember. Alex, what are you thinking?
Peter Pan and Dr. Seuss.
You want to elaborate?
Peter Pan can fly, and he was admired by all his peers. So he was a hero, not a villain.
Oh,
and
so
Dr. Seuss is the link between the reality and the fantasy of your imagination. Over.
It's actually a really interesting question you asked here, Stacey, because it really ties into who we most want to be, doesn't it? It's really relevant.
If I could just share something, because I'm always interested in the getting to know you space from the beginning. So I just got up because I had been working on something for a long time. I'm just going to share the cover because I just want to give an example. So this is The Mermaid. This is what, but I want to point out that there's two choices in it, which goes to what Colin has to say. So on this, it says island adventure or deep dive, because there's two parts of me. So, maybe at another time I'll share it, but I'm just excited because there's a lot I've wanted to share for a long time about profiling and meeting, getting to know each other. Josh?
Can I ask you a character that, or let's use the word archetype, I guess, or, a fictional character that you relate to as far as in the
I'd love that.
Mythology of mermaids, or I would love to know what character, if any, that you resonate with.
So obviously I've thought about all the questions that I asked, so I have an answer ready. There's two. There's from the fairy tale, it's Cinderella, the part where she sits in her own corner. In my own little corner, in my own little chair, I can be whatever I want to be. And the other one is Yentl from the movie, where she has this thirst for knowledge, but she's not supposed to be the one asking the questions and getting the answers. So those are my two. Thanks
Beautiful.
for asking. Because I really believe that everybody wants to be asked. I really, really believe that.
Well, Joseph Campbell spent his whole life on that idea, and his library is in Santa Barbara, the Joseph Campbell Library. And I spent a lot of time with a university that was built around Joseph Campbell's library called the Pacifica University. And the founder of that university is a good friend of mine. And that's where I understand archetypes and knowledge and Jungian. And I think it's very important. Joseph Campbell spent a lot of time with George Lucas before he wrote Star Wars. to hone in on those archetypes. And I think without doing that, it never would have been the success it became, because of the time he spent with developing those archetypes so that there's someone or something in that movie that everyone in the world can relate to. He made enough characters archetypically, like I could even relate to the old Ben Kenobi character. I love that character. But it is important for us to embody the archetype that's in our soul so that we can feel like we're the hero of our own story, which is the name of Joseph Campbell's book, The Hero's Journey.
I just want to touch one of the things that Colin, I'll be real quick, Colin, but you know, Colin mentions that there's a professional and a personal way of presenting. And I guess I just want to say that I think that I present the same wherever I go. I think the closer we are to our real archetype, the more similar we'll be in both of those situations. And for me personally, that's my goal. Colin, you're muted.
Colin, I don't hear the sound. Sound turned off for Colin there.
Yeah, it wasn't the mic, it was a software switch. I think.
Yeah, this archetype, this is, that's really interesting. Like, what are our greatest archetypes? What are the superheroes? What characteristics do they have?
Hey, Glenn, I was going to say before Colin fixes his mic, I spent a lot of time playing pickup basketball on the streets and all over the world. And most teams, when you pick up a team on a pickup court, you try to pick the best player. And I always tried to pick the worst player because I wanted to make sure that that person has the chance to be a hero. So during the game, I passed them the ball when no one else would pass them the ball to give them that opportunity to feel wanted on the court.
And those moments when you make that choice, those moments, yeah, they have a big impact on everything that happens.
It's so beautiful when you win the game and you have the worst player on your team and the worst player hits the winning shot. That's what I live for, is those moments on pickup basketball. When I pass the ball to the worst player, we're down by 1 point, and the worst player scores, the joy on that person's face, the woman or man, it's to me, that's what I'm living for, is that joy of their face going, hey, nobody believed in me, but I believed in myself, and you passed me the ball, and I made that shot. I've had that moment a handful of times, and it was just the best moment in life. So are you fixed, Colin?
No.
Yeah. What if it could be like that for all people? What if we could have a society where we organized so that we adapted to each person?
Yeah,
just like that.
But Glenn, what about the people that, so Josh passes the ball to the worst person on the team. What about when that person misses the shot and all the other people are like, why did Josh give it to him? What about those
90%
people?
of the time, that's what happens, Stacy. 90% of the time, I pass it to him, and everyone hates me, and they don't pick me on their team, and then I'm the worst player on that court the next time I play because they hate me for losing the game, for passing it to that person. But that's, to me, the challenge of a pickup court is you build a community where you're picked last next time because you're the guy that passed to the worst guy. But then later you get to prove it to that community, and then they start to love you, and then you can do the cycle all over again. And then I get to be the captain and pick the best guy, the worst guy. And to me, that's what life is all about. I think that's the community that I've lived in every aspect of my life, whether it's basketball or large corporations or small. I try to live my life like that. If we're bringing up the worst person, then the community is stronger. The more worse people we bring up, it makes our community that much
Well, how
stronger.
can we even say that any people are worse? I mean, I see every person as having this sort of unique beauty in their own way. It might not be, functional according to some metric or other, but that doesn't matter because,
but it does
value.
It does matter, though. I agree. It
But
does matter.
Shouldn't though, should it?
Absolutely, it should. If I'm going for brain surgery, I'm not just going to say, well, everybody's equally as beautiful, so you're a nice person.
That's related to a task. It's related to some specific skills. But when on the value level, we couldn't really ever say that one person is worth less compared to someone else. Maybe we could say they're more suited for those tasks. That makes sense. But this doesn't ever seem to indicate that, each person is a beautiful being, a human being, is a spectacular manifestation of life.
Well, that we agree.
That's a reality.
That I agree with. But to pretend that there's no differences, that's just as bad.
Of course. We all know that. Yeah, Josh.
So I think what you're saying is absolutely correct. And I think the brilliance of that statement is to switch up the tasks so every person has a chance to be the best at it and every person has a chance to be the worst at it. So therefore, we all get to learn from each other. Because if we're all doing the same task over and over again, that's the society we're living in right now, globally, is the task of making money and being this powerful money person. That's not for everybody. Not everybody in the world. That's not everyone's hero's journey. So we take Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos and stick him in the Amazon rainforest and go see how many berries he can pick before he dies of picking a poisonous berry. And then we take a lady that's been doing that for 50, 60 years. She'll be amazing. She'll be able to just look at the plants and know which ones to eat. And his skill set will be useless in the rainforest. He'll die within 3 days.
So, but should he be supporting it? Sorry, Alex.
Our skill set must be relative to our environment, our culture.
And my point, Alex, is that our environment, when we keep playing the same environment over and over again, that creates what Glenn is talking about. People that have value intrinsically are never able to show that value because the environment's always the same. If we don't switch up the environment, then we never get to see the beauty of all the souls on this planet.
So we have to revitalize the organization in a way. That's kind of what you're getting at then. We kind of have to organize our environment. Or
take out the word have to and say that again.
Well, that we organize consciously our scenarios, our settings, our daily existence. Is that that's sort of what this points towards, right? That we have to consciously organize the situations, I guess you could say, that we're in.
So
is that kind of what you're getting at?
What I'm getting at is we're only as good as our options. So if we're playing a game together and the game is Frisbee or juggling, if our only two options are Frisbee and juggling, and Sam is great at juggling and Colin is great at Frisbee, then there's only two people in our group that will be very skilled with those options. But if we have multiple options outside of that, we're only as good as our possibilities. So if we can play another game called drawing with a pen and a pencil, and Stacy's amazing at that, then the more options we have, the more environments we create, the more humanity can become holistic. But by limiting the choices is where we get into problems. That's what I'm saying, is the wicked problem of the world is everybody wants to play the game they're good at, and very few people want to be the worst player in the room. That's my point.
I want to pick up on what Josh is saying about options, because I think that's key. So let's just stick with the Frisbee and the basketball. Excuse me. Even if you don't change the game, just having a place for the person that carries the Frisbee or the person that sits on the stands, that provides options. And then the added one of, okay, does anybody want to come in now? Because I feel like I've been in that place a lot where I've wanted to sit in and just listen. And maybe I've had somebody say, well, that's not for you. Well, but that's the way that I want to absorb the energy, or, you know, however. So I think the idea of, I think that if we just create leaving as many openings as possible, still doing what our goal is, but maybe not closing off the doors unless it interferes. That's a good way to start. And when I jumped in before, Glenn, when you were speaking, it's just about the, I just wanted to point out, oh yeah, when I jumped in about Joshua giving the ball to the guy that loses the game, I just want to point out that there's so many different perspectives that when we try to plan for one thing, sometimes we're not looking at all the unintended consequences. So I don't know if that kind of fixed planning is the way to go. I like what Josh has to say about the options. And I always think the more options we go, you know, the more we, like again, when I did my mermaid, it was island adventure or deep dive. And I think that it's at every step we fork off, that just keeps creating more options.
Yes.
Is Colin's mic working yet? I don't know. I saw him try to check in. We're just
waiting now.
For your mic.
Colin? No.
Doesn't seem this any sound. It's interesting about options. Sam's been so interested in agreements, and I always feel that an agreement is really an option that we sort of say that we want to do, and perhaps later on we might change that, but
specific agreements and general agreement. It's important in agreements. It's important for a team to understand the important difference between a general agreement and a specific contract, if you want. Okay.
Of course. Yeah.
You know, I see that we're at the top of the hour and I have to check out. I think I need to go back to sleep. I really have a bad headache, but it was really nice being here and I loved the conversation.
Thank you for your energy,
Great
Stacey.
to have you here, Stacey.
Thank you. See you hopefully tomorrow.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
I was just going to say, Glenn, one of the skills that I think Alex was bringing up is when you don't have that option, meaning if there's an agreement between A and B and neither one of those work for you, it's kind of hard to make that agreement. If A doesn't work and B doesn't work, then, or C doesn't work or D doesn't work, and then you create a E agreement or an F agreement and that doesn't work for everybody, it can just go on forever. So I think the real skill set is to create enough options where somehow it just clicks in where, oh yeah, that works with everybody. And that's really hard to do. That's a really hard task.
What if we had knowledge about our values? Do you think that could, like if we had a value, yeah.
So I think the key is something that Joss Winder brings up too a lot, and I think a lot of people bring this up, is we have to know ourselves well enough before we can even make an agreement. Because without that knowledge, you're just constantly trying to pick between A and B, and you're wondering, is it my inability to pick A or B? Is it within me? If you don't know yourself well enough, it's hard for you to make an agreement that resonates with your soul.
Yes. Yeah, it always has to be your transformation too, doesn't it?
I agree.
I had a, go ahead, Alex.
I was just saying,
Well, I
I'm
was
just trying to be agreeable.
He's trying to be agreeable.
That's
An
what most
agreeable
people
guy.
do. That's what we've been talking about lately is we're all trying to be so agreeable and nice. We're not actually propelling our souls towards our deepest, greatest truths because we're trying to be agreeable. And I just wanted to share a story, if I may, of it was 1999, and I was invited to work at this startup company that had never existed in an area of the internet that didn't exist yet called affiliate marketing. And the CEO asked me what I want to do for his company because he just got $1 million and had money to give me. And he said, do you want to work in sales or customer service? And I said, well, I just came from sales. I fucking hate sales. And I've done customer service. I hate that. And he said, well, let's create a new category called account development management that didn't exist, an account developer. And that's what I ended up doing and created a whole industry called account development management for the affiliate marketing industry that didn't even exist. And now it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and there's millions of account development managers in the world now. And that category didn't exist before. So God bless the universe for allowing that opportunity to create millions of jobs for people to be account development managers in the affiliate marketing space.
So
You
you
don't have to
develop
just
people's accounts.
What's that?
So it's like people's accounts, or so you're like an expert that helps people improve their accounts, kind of them.
Well, the
role.
way that it worked before that, Glenn, it was when you create software, the salespeople would sell the software, and then when you buy it, you only have an opportunity to complain to the customer service about the problems. There was no one there helping you walk you through the software and understand it well enough to be able to proactively create new versions of the software. Therefore, customer service doesn't need to sit there and have millions of complaints. We could find out what the needs are of the customer to create the next version of the software. And that was the job of the account development manager, is to help develop the software to work for the customer, as opposed to just going, well, you bought it, you're stuck with it. And if you don't like it, go to complaints, go to customer service, because that's the way
So
it
it's
is.
It's basically about finding a solution for that specific person that's well adapted to them.
I thought marketing solutions and affiliate marketing was for people who had a product or service to market and customers to buy it.
Well, we were teaching people, there was no such thing as affiliate marketing at the time, Alex. So we were teaching people how to use our software to manage the people that wanted to resell it. Because a lot of people were just giving banner ads at the time, and the banner ads weren't working. So the affiliates weren't making money. The people selling the products weren't making money, and everyone was just frustrated. So we created a new way to advertise on the internet. We actually created a JavaScript that went way beyond a little banner. I don't know if you guys remember the old internet. Everything had a banner at the top. It was a standardized banner. And if that banner didn't communicate, nobody clicked on it. So we started creating new tools for the affiliates to put onto websites to allow them to click over and sell the products. And by walking people through our software, they didn't even realize those tools existed. So once they knew they were there, I gave one of the tools to a company called Tower Records. And that was a big CD and music company before the MP3s came along. And they actually created a jukebox in a JavaScript. And when you clicked on the jukebox, it opened up a down arrow and you could pick all the songs. And then when you clicked on the song, you could buy that from their website for a CD. And that changed the game. That was really pivotal. And we did a lot of innovating, but I couldn't have done that if I didn't sit there with the person managing the affiliates to go through what their needs were and to get the feedback from their ambassadors and their affiliates, because I didn't know what they needed, because everyone needs different. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, the artist needs are connected with the affiliates and the amount of time that their song gets played. You know? How do they get compensated?
Hello?
Compensate the artist, the content producer is the artist, right? Who produces the music. The affiliate marketers are just selling it off and sharing it. But the downloaders, the person downloading it, how does their payment filter down through to the artist?
Well, this was before you could download it. So this was when it was only on a CD, a record, or a cassette tape. So the way that the artist got paid was from the record label that produced the physical product that they bought from the record store. So this is before the artist was directly involved into that business transaction. This is before that.
Testing.
We can hear you, Colin.
Oh, yeah, good. I had to restart Zoom. Yeah, I had to restart Zoom. Yeah, that's an analysis position, you know, and inside and on the outside, it's a consultant, I guess, which would be like an industry, they call them an expert in an area where you go and find out and translate what people say they need into what they really need, or you show it back to them and walk them through developing something that fits a need or a set of needs. And, you know, I think throughout history, we go through a regrouping of tools that are available. And I think one of the most interesting things when you develop tools is that you're never exactly sure if you make a tool that has some variability into it, what it can do creatively, what your users will actually end up doing. You know, I guess the best example of that would be obvious if you had a word processor, so people could write words into a computer and print them out, make a book. Who knows what book they're going to write? You know, so it depends on, you know, like you say, what options they have, and if they know how to type, or if they know how to print, or if, you know, or even better yet, know how to publish, or how to put that in front of the right people's eyes. You could write all kinds of books, but, you know, there's somebody else that has to, you know, be an agent that helps, you know, the marketing and affiliate, you know, so it's that whole story over and over again about signaling what it is you have to offer, and getting the proper, you know, remuneration.
I think Joshua has something.
I was just going to riff on what you're saying, Colin, is in my experience helping the internet to build out from 1994 with the first browser to all these smartphones and mobile devices and et cetera, what the internet is now, it created opportunities for millions of people to do things they never knew that they even needed to be done. Like, for example, that JavaScript, Scott McNeely, the guy who started Sun Microsystems, helped to advance JavaScript. But at the time, there wasn't a need for all these JavaScript developers because the browsers couldn't embed JavaScript properly. So once that was created, it opened up millions of jobs for developers in the JavaScript space. And you can continue that so on and so forth with all the languages that run off of the backbone language, which is TCP, IP, HTTP, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why, to me, the internet is just in its infantile stage still in 2020. I believe we're going to create millions and millions and millions of jobs, not just on the internet, but within the human beings that are doing. There's just so much to create, not just in technology, but just in the human, like who's going to actually stop. When I first started, we were all webmasters, and our job was to drink Mountain Dew and eat Cheetos and look at every aspect of building a website, which was so complicated and confusing. But the job of webmaster got broken from one job into thousands and millions of jobs. So same thing with any task, whether it be the giant turbines that they're putting into the ocean right now to do tidal wave fuel energy. There could be millions of jobs created to help protect the coral reefs and the porpoises and the seals from these tidal, there's so much possibility of creating opportunities that didn't exist, like a job for a diver to go down and check the coral reefs and make sure that the wind turbines aren't affecting the ocean from regrowth and et cetera, et cetera. I just feel like when you look at it as resourceless,
there's
as opposed to
endless new practices. Yeah, we can start. It can become meaningful jobs. I mean, we could go in all directions. We could have amazing professions that were never even heard of before. What about institutes for super quality existence with intelligent, love-based AI organizing each individual? Yeah, Alex had to go. Thank you, Alex. Yeah, it's getting to the top of the hour. But I need to take a little break soon, but I think it's moved into some really interesting territory here.
Well, Glenn, before we go, I just wanted to say we have an opportunity here to create many, many skill sets and opportunities to show the brilliance of each soul that comes here to the GCC to shine. And if we continue to do that and everyone feels like they're creating, I believe that energy will bring other people, because when they come here, they're like, oh, wow, Glenn loves creating this and Colin loves creating that and Stacy loves creating this. Look at all these people loving what they're creating, not necessarily as agreements or teams, but as individual souls that are feeling fulfilled. And that energy attracts other souls to try to find fulfillment. And if we can help those souls find their fulfillment, then we're doing our global challenges job.
Yeah, we are. Especially if we become examples of just doing awesome things and just exploring awesome things continuously, like that might be the thing that just creates a change, a new possibility.
Glenn, can you help me to remind everybody to check in with everybody to make sure that everybody feels that they are creating and living their best life and their best?
Very important. Yeah.
Very important.
We need to really have that consideration for everyone in the room. We really have to learn that skill, don't we? And
I'm trying to learn it. I'm trying to. It's. For me, I don't feel like I've totally given the best that I could possibly give to the group, and I want to keep trying to give more and listen.
Yeah, it's like I always feel you have so many more things that you could go into, but it's like it would probably take a year to just even begin to get into it, because it's like it's developed so far, right? I think that's a challenge for us all, actually.
I think it's a pretty simple thing. If we just went around the room and Alex said, hey, I need your help, Josh. And it's a specific thing that I spent maybe 20 years learning, and I've done that actually with Alex. I've gone into a room and used my skill as a UX, UI web developer and looked at his website and said, hey, maybe move this to the left, move this to the right, change this color. And vice versa. If someone could help me, I could use some help. I'm trying to organize communication channels. So when to use a telephone, when to use Skype, when to use Zoom. I want to get better at that with my communities so that everyone's communicating better. I could use some help with practicing the communication channels, like when to use Trello, when to use Basecamp, when to use this, when to use that. Just practicing that would be helpful.
Yeah, that would be knowledge development between people. It's like Sam's communities of impact.
Yeah. Yep. Well, thank you for your time today. I don't know if you
Yeah,
probably
I
need to
think
go
I
and
need to take a little break, and maybe I'll talk to Colin a little later at some point. But yeah, I think it's so stimulating just to go through these topics. For me, at least, it brings clarity, so it's very useful for me. But I mean, I have my interest area. I mean, I know we all come here with all kinds of our own ideas, like what we want to test out, but yeah, at least it's always interesting because you get so much material, rich material. So there's always something to learn from just whatever we share. So it kind of doesn't matter. But it's just really fun to just listen in and let it contemplate in me. And I just think it's really important issues to understand better. And I guess it takes probably a lifetime, to really
Do you mind?
get there.
Do you mind if I check in with Colin? Because I think he's got his mic working. I just want to check in with you, Colin, and see where you're at with, we've been talking about podcasting for a year, and I just wanted to check in with you and see
I'll be logging off then now. Maybe I'll talk to you later, Colin. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye,
Well, I think,
guys.
again, we'll see you, Glenn. If you watch this back, Glenn, perhaps Trello is a place that we can nudge ahead. Just wanted to give them that. And with podcasting, that's very interesting. I do see you as somebody who can find an interesting topic. Like, you're into all kinds of sciencey topics that I find fascinating, and other things as well. So it's a matter of presenting an idea, I think, and following it through. There's many, many styles on internet of doing these kinds of things, podcasting or doing a video casting or podcasting with pictures.
Let's just stick with audio. I feel like just starting off with the most basic is hard enough to master, of just an audio podcast. Just keep it simple.
Yeah, I think in drawing the pictures in the air for people to imagine definitely is there's a certain skill to that, definitely.
Can I throw an idea out at you, Colin?
Sure.
What if we created an audio podcast, and at the end it's given to you, and whenever you have the time, you can put the visuals to the audio. So you could map the audio with your mapping skills and visual skills. And then afterwards, the audio could be presented as its own. But then when you're done with the other layer on top of it, you're showing the connections of the conversation, like an animator does with podcasts. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've seen that. I really like the RSA thing, the way they draw out the animations. There's a few talks about, there's one famous one about, what motivates people. And they went through a study. So basically they go through somebody explaining some kind of a study that's been done, some experiment, and you can walk them right through it with pictures. So you can visualize it for them. Lots of ideas.
Yeah, and another piece of value, if you just made links, because when someone's talking, like if you watch a Joe Rogan podcast, the guy, I forgot his name, Jamie, in the background, that's constantly tracking the conversation and trying to pull up the links in real time, which is almost impossible. That guy's a genius. But if you could go back in not real time, pull up the links of the conversation when everyone's mentioning these things, and then put them onto a PDF document with hyperlinks in the PDF, then it would be an add-on where you listen to the conversation, then you can visually, that's a lot of work to show the mind map during the conversation, because that helps people follow sometimes with abstract conversations, the mind map. And then at the end, to get a PDF download, that'd be super valuable for a knowledge database at the end of every conversation, to be able to click on a PDF and all the links, just like good YouTubers do. They put all the links in below of what they talked about.
I think these things, again, are all just a matter of organizing based on how much you know that you can prep and prepare for something, which I think is essential for success. Even if, Joe Rogan sits down, but I'm sure he does some prep and he falls into his routine. I like watching Stephen Colbert talk about taking over the Late Show. And he was talking about how he didn't know what he was going to do, and just, you know, just by feeling the rhythm that he had to engage with the audience, he you know, he learned a style, his you know, his thing. So you know, Joe Rogan has a thing. So when I'm looking at this idea, I'm thinking about, you know, what's Josh's thing that he's going to, you know, and I think you have that thing that you yourself can add to stimulate, say, a guest or whatever. And I do see me more as someone in the background, like the data butler, you know, and they can do maps, links, or whatever. But it's really just curation in the flow, which is, you know, something that I got interested in. The idea of having this iterative journey, which is sort of software development, you know, biased, I guess, way of thinking, in with what, you know, is happening with some conversations from other groups, like Joachim from DigLife. You know, he's very much and gives presentations about working in the flow, and that makes so much sense to me. You can go back and add things after the fact, but if you're ready for them, you can kind of get a lot of that busy work taken care of, you know, frame the context, and then spend your time, you know, harvesting the gravy, as it was. Or, you know, when you go back, you're going to fill in those holes. So, you know, have a memory or something that you build upon. So that's kind of how I'm thinking, going a little bit slower with all the things you mentioned. But if it's something you're interested in and it's fun and you have a style that matches, then, you know, I think if you don't fight it, you can actually feed into something like that and work in the flow, definitely. So I would suggest, and I think I had that, you know, you or we or whoever outline, you know, a couple of Friday experiments on GCC, you know, have a few dry runs of the science. Now I probably won't be available in the day hours, but, you know, you being in California, I think that works for you to be a little later anyway. So, because you're 4 hours behind.
I'd love to get started. The blocks that I have are the data connection. The other block is the organizing of the audio quality to make sure that there's a pre-run, like a mic check, before we have the conversation with the person, is to have the pre-conversation and go, okay, how's your mic levels? How is this? Are you on Zoom? Like, I just did the update for Zoom, and there's all sorts of new tools for mic and audio checks. And, you know, even
I find that secondary, though. I do. I find it secondary due to the interest of the idea, because you're giving it here. And I think people can get your essence here.
Let me be straight up. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and when the audio isn't clear, it really ruins the flow.
Well, there is a certain amount. Like, the thing that gets me is the cutting in and out. That's kind of a showstopper. And I'm having that now with my internet. I don't have rock solid internet right now.
So
in fact, the call today cut in and out 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, if we were to do a show, I would set up a base camp specifically with a checklist for each guest. And I would make sure that one of the things on the checklist is bandwidth. The other thing is mic quality. The other thing is their actual computer they're using, and check all of that stuff off before the show starts. Because otherwise you're just wasting your time and they're wasting their time with all the cutouts and everything.
Yeah, even better than Basecamp. Like, you could do your project management in Basecamp, but I would make something more public that, you know, people could just go and know that these.
I don't care if it's in a Word doc. I just need I need a checklist. I need to know before at 9 o'clock, January 13th, if I'm rearranging my life, you're rearranging your life, whoever the guest is rearranging their life. If we didn't do our due diligence to do all those checks beforehand and everything started cutting out, obviously we can't account for real time, but then we'd have to reschedule and do it all over again. So,
well, I think a good place to start is building, you know, knowing that you eventually want to have your quality rock solid. Like, no problem with that. Do the best you can do that way. In addition to that, I'm thinking on the other side of the project direction would be, what is Josh's, you know, dream talk? It's, you know, what's your heart song that you would go and investigate? So that's kind of,
I'm not worried about that.
Well.
It's real simple. Each guest, whatever their area of expertise is, it's exactly the Joe Rogan format. If their area of expertise is like Yoakum. Let's just take Yoakum. What is Yoakum? I don't know him. I've never met him. What's his area of expertise? What is he trying to do in his life? What is his work?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. He takes a very professional type of approach to building up these digital communities. He's been involved in going on, you could call them immersive quests, and trying to experience these spaces. So he's very much into the online spaces, and he's into harvesting value of how communication. So one of the things that I gel with him on very much is this idea of building communication tools that work in the flow. So
there's that's your podcast right there. Everything you just said is exactly what the podcast would be.
Yeah. So, and we're kind of doing that, but that's something that you could say, okay, well, we're going to fish internally, which is a great idea. But I see the podcast that you were talking about as something that kind of plants its own sprout. That's a Josh thing. It's like a Joe Rogan thing. And, you're going to talk about these science topics that you keep posting. So if you post one, you say, no, that's really important.
I don't want to.
You don't want to do CRISPR?
You
don't want to do CRISPR and that kind of stuff?
If you can get the lady that got the Nobel Prize for CRISPR onto the podcast, fuck yeah, I want to do CRISPR. If you can get
that's what we should be going for.
Life to CRISPR, I don't want to just sit.
Why is it important?
It's important to have a good conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, why is CRISPR important? Why would we want to spend people's time listening to it? And why would they be fascinated, even though the audio quality might not be perfect? The podcast is riveting.
I just had an amazing conversation with the gentleman who I started companies with years ago, and we hadn't talked in a few years. And we touched on subjects like, I told him if we had recorded that conversation, people would have loved it, because we touched on so many interesting topics. But having a very clear understanding, like, are you watching The Portal? Are you following Eric Weinstein's podcast?
Eric and Brett. Brett was the one from the professor at Green University, Greenfield, something, and he got kicked out. They were doing experimental type of free type of, I wouldn't say too experimental, but definitely a different way of engaging with their students. And he got blindsided by political correctness, I think, and it kind of bit him. And then his brother Eric was the mathematician. Yeah, Eric's the mathematician kind of guy. He talks with Sam Harris a lot. Yeah,
but here's my question.
Sam Harris. He just started one actually, and I've seen. Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to ask you. Are you following it? The new one that he just started? He said Sam gave him some advice, or other people. Like, his first podcast looked like it was a video. It's not a podcast, but the name. But yeah, he said that it was like very feng shui. And so the one he just did, he's got some open space and some windows, and it's, it still looks a little contrived to me, but the people are so interesting. Like, Eric is fascinating, and they really dive in. One of the things he said is that, he finds it very boring to talk about, the first level debating of topics. He likes to go in underneath the surface of it and look for, why these things are clicking and ticking, not just your opinion of them, and surface level politics, you could say. And, I'm very much like that too. So yeah, I find Eric fascinating, and I didn't get to watch the whole podcast, but yeah, him and Sam Harris he had Sam on again. And even in the podcast, he starts it out. Yeah, he says to him at the beginning, well, so what would you like to talk about, Sam? And would you like to kick this off and stuff? And Sam goes, no, this is your baby. What do you want to talk about? And that's how I kind of see you. Yeah, I was going to say, actually, Eric asked him if he was in trouble. He said, are you in trouble? Too, yeah. And Sam said to him directly, he said, if I was in trouble, you'd be the first one I'd call. So you'll know when I'm in trouble.
Yeah, so they're promoting each other's platform. So it's like Sam has a message, Eric has a kind of a message, and there's a synergy between them. So when they get together, they don't really know who's steering, or, well, we'll start it off with me, but jump in anytime and please steer. And that's very much a GCC thing, but without the I think that extra level of focus, it takes some time. If you got 12 people in the room or 5 people in the room, it makes it more difficult than just having 2 or 3, you could say. So, you know, there's different formats for different size rooms.
Yeah, let me be clear with what I'm trying to ask you is, when you have a brilliant person like Eric Weinstein who goes on Joe Rogan's podcast and he looks Joe Rogan in the eyes and says, I am going to finally do what you've been telling me to do for years and start my own podcast.
Yeah.
And I'm going to call it The Portal. And I'm going to figure this thing out that you figured out, Joe. I'm going to figure my own way through this podcasting world. And it's a great opportunity to watch the beginning of the origins, because 2,000 episodes in, let's see where Eric Weinstein is. He's only 12 episodes in right now. So it's a great time to watch him evolve. And I've been watching about 7 or 9 different podcasters evolve from day zero.
Yeah, me too.
One of my favorites. Do you know this group? I don't know if you follow the electric car revolution, the electric revolution. It's called
electric cars. Sorry. No, I haven't seen a specific podcast on that. No.
I've been following this podcast for, I think they're up to 173 episodes. They do it every week. And I watched from day one, and it's a father and son team that's called Now You Know. If you go into YouTube and type in Now You Know electric cars, it'll pop up.
Yeah.
And I've watched.
Yeah, there's some of those. There's very interesting. There's all kinds of those, like, you know, the top 10 obvious meme. And that's kind of something I tried to bring into the maps. But yeah, just to riff off what you were saying about watching podcasters start up, I think if you go a level above that, well, there's, you know, how did they do it? Would I like to do it like that? So how do I reflect what they did off of what I think I could do? But also,
what I'm trying to tell you, Colin, is I'm not starting now doing that. I've been doing that for 7 fucking years. 7
no, I believe
years.
you. I believe you. Looking at formats and thinking,
don't worry.
I know. I'm not saying something you don't know, but I'm the next point I want to make on top of that is that if you look at, so that's you're looking at the format side of things, and you're looking at, you know, what are the topics and the interesting people side of things. But on top of that, there's the what was I going to say to riff off what you were talking about, to find out what works. He said, you know, I'm going to do what Joe said I should be doing all along. And that's kind of like a sub message I'm trying to give to people here when they're trying to get their profile together, or what I imagine is them starting to go around the quest game at the first level, getting their stories straight, aligning with themselves, knowing themselves. That was spoken today. If you don't know yourself, how are you going to move on to carry your weight in an engagement? So, you know, going around getting ready and making a set of documents, you know, wherever they are, that, you know, for Glenn, I said, look, you've talked for X amount of hours about superstructures and all these things, but do you have a 2-minute, a 5-minute, and a 10-minute version of that you could just go onto a podcast and say, hey, my name is Glenn, and next 2 minutes, I'm going to wow you with the idea of superstructures and spaces and things? Or is he going to, you know, feel like Noam Chomsky and get, you know, chopped off? You know, that was Noam Chomsky's lament, that he could never get in the day when it was important. He could never get these long formats like Joe Rogan. Now there's as much, you know, we can fill our boots with this because we're now, as you say, in an age where we can get good enough production quality to get very interesting ideas out there. And, you know, and as a you know, as a side effect of not side effect, but as you know, attract a lot of people to join in and enjoy that or contribute to that or whatever the case may be. And definitely I'm right with you for, you know, years watching how people are doing these things and thinking, you know, I watched a lot of, not to, you know, I don't say pin myself, but I watch a lot of the things that are in the discussion of philosophy. And one of those subtopics is, you know, religion. And a subtopic of that is atheism. So, you know, you see all these atheists popping out, or you see a lot of Mormons, or people, you get really watching people find out what's most important to them in their heart and watching them put their artistic spin on it. And I'm thinking, you know, I really enjoy this, but I would never do it that way. You know, so you're getting this reflection of watching, like you say, people start these things. And so it's almost a way of not making those same mistakes yourself when you're really passionate into something, or actually doing that, you know, putting that crazy spin on it. Like they were saying earlier, well, you know, who's Josh? And I didn't hear Gumdrops come up. I don't know if he's still part of your character or not, but you know, I have different personas too. I'm a Skywalker, you know, there's all kinds of things.
So what I've been working on for 7 years, probably 9 years now, actually, it's more than 7 years, 7 years watching podcasts, 9 years working on it, is a show called The Midnight Show with Jimmy Gumdrops. And that's the name of the podcast. So it has a name, The Midnight Show with Jimmy Gumdrops. And when we interview the person, I would very much like, and it doesn't have to happen, but I would like it to be midnight where that person is. So we're having a middle of the night conversation, which changes the dynamic of the conversation because it's the end of their day. It's in the middle of the night. It's a little loopy. And if we don't do it at the midnight hour for that person, that's fine. But I'd like to market the show to say when it's midnight wherever you are, that's the time to click on the podcast. So download it, save it, and at midnight, wherever you are, turn on The Midnight Show with Jimmy Gumdrop. So you get to watch it at midnight. That's the concept.
Yeah, well, I think you got a seed there, but I wouldn't limit it to where the person's in midnight. But for example, if you did it at midnight, that'd be a great time for me because I can join in at 8 o'clock. Right now, if I did it at midnight,
forget
then,
about,
you know,
it's just an idea called The Midnight Show. We suggest, so for example, because we're living in the age of video on demand, you can watch it anytime you want. You can watch it at 7 in the
wait, now
morning.
hold on, I got that backwards. My midnight would be your 8 o'clock, right?
So here's the thing. Let's not get caught up in the
well, no,
minutia
all I'm just saying
is
you got a good idea there where you could have like sub people where somebody is tracing. For example, I'll just throw this out there without taking any time. We've discussed in the GCC how to make regional type of breakouts from the main show, which is, I think, a good place to talk about general topics, but almost an impossible place to get down to business, which is, you know, kind of what this barn raising is trying to do. But still, if you and I did some podcasting, or I and Glenn did some, you know, context interfacing, you know, we got Neil Davidson involved. We got people who are 4 hours ahead of somebody to, you know, chase people back. You could almost have like a ratcheting system around the world where it's almost like a 24-hour thing, but the people who are at night can, you know, there's an interesting aspect to that midnight thing. I like it.
Okay, yeah. I just saw Stacy chimed in. She said, I like that concept. So she's listening still. She's still on the call. I just want to say to you, Colin, I'm not trying to brainstorm.
I don't see her.
She just put it in the chat.
Okay, I'm on a phone, so I got limited.
That's okay.
Visuals here.
I just want to let you know, sometimes you have brainstorming conversations with me, which is fine, but I'm not here to brainstorm that concept. That concept's already in stone.
Yeah, no, that's fine. If you have that in stone, then that's your choice. But I definitely see it being your baby as far as what you're projecting. And
let me be clear with my communication, because I do, no offense, I love you to death. I just have to go check in on my mom, and it's 10:40.
I gotta go too. No, that was really fun. That was
okay.
Really fun after show.
Let me let you go, but here's what I need help with. I'm gonna just say my ask to you, and you can say, hey, I don't have time for that, Josh. I need help going through the list of all the communities and all the people. And I would love to do a brainstorming session with the people that you find most fascinating, the people I find most fascinating. And if we both agree on that, let's reach out to them and see what their time frame is. And if you want to get involved in that podcast, you tell me what you need and what direction do you want to produce that. Like, it's your baby. Like, I love this guy. Really want.
Well, we could really follow up on what we were talking about today is, you know, getting the base.
I'm going to ask you a direct question, Colin, a very direct question. Who is piquing your interest in our conversational communities that you find so fascinating? You want to hear their take on specific subjects? If you could give me that short list. It could be one person. It could be 3 people. It could be just 2 people or just one. But if you tell me that one person that you're fascinated with, not right now, but at some point.
Yeah, I would say it's the humble communication.
No, a name,
leaders.
A name, not an ambiguous.
Yeah, no, there's 3 or 4 of them. I'll give you a bunch of
Just
names.
pick
There's
one.
Joachim.
Pick one, just one. I just want one.
There's
Joachim.
John Keldon. There's Heiner. There's Sam. All the people that are at the top of trying to push their journey that have a mountain of data.
Out of those 4 people, John Keldon, Joachim, Sam, and Heiner, out of those 4, which one are you most interested in? And do you have some questions that you would ask if you were hosting the conversation?
I think the one that we'd have a lot of fun with would be Heiner, actually. Right off to start off with.
And do you have questions for Heiner that you'd like me to ask him?
I have unfinished business with Heiner in these maps. So yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Can you make a short list of questions that'll help you finish that map with Heiner? And then we could do that?
Well, the thing is he's busy and he keeps changing to different things. I'd like to do it with a lot of people. So I'd like to start, we could do an extrapolation and try what we could do with Heiner for sure. Come up with a few questions that I would like answered. I think that's a great idea.
Like Yoda, there is no try. There's just a question you want me to ask Heiner, and I'm going to call that guy and I'm going to ask him that question. So if you have that question,
that's interesting. That's interesting. But I would like to I would like to make sure that the questions are getting tracked in the interface that I see that Glenn has put together with pen and paper. So I'd like to talk to him.
For you to help me, could you do your due diligence, go back through it, find those questions between you and Glenn, put them on a piece of paper with bulleted points, give me that piece of paper, whether it be a Word doc or whatever.
Yeah.
Give me those
that's the idea.
Before I contact Heiner, so I can tell him I'd like to have a conversation with you at this date and time. And just to let you know, these are some of the questions that are going to be asked, so he can have a heads up, so we can be respectful to Heiner. Yeah,
and I see Glenn as somebody who can really harbor and shepherd this kind of a thing as well with the diagrams he's making. Maybe you have your way of looking at it, he has his way of looking at it, I have my way of looking at it, but I do see a synergy where if I was going to talk with Heiner, I would like to use something like with what Glenn's building and put it out on a format, something like what you're trying to build. So sort of be like
I'm not trying to do, again, I hate the word try. Sorry, that's a big trigger word for me, because when people use the word try, those are people that don't do. That's just my own trigger. I don't like try.
That's not. I think we should do something, and we should try different things as we experiment. So we should
do something.
Use the word. How about instead of try, I use the word experiment? Would that be better?
Okay. No, I don't want to experiment. I want an index card in front of me. I want to be on a phone with Heiner. I want to flip through the index card. I want to have a conversation with him. And if he gets to it naturally, I check off on the index card, he answered the question. If he doesn't, I have the index card to ask him that question. And then at the end of the podcast, all the questions that you or Glenn or anyone else has got asked. I just want to do my job and make sure
sure.
Host.
And I think that's a framework for what I'm considering. I think that what you're outlining is a framework or a list of wants or some kind of a scope. But I would say just for simplicity, a framework.
I'm asking
that's
you
a framework of what you want.
Question. I'm asking you to write down the questions that you want me to ask Heiner. That's my ask of you. And if you don't want to do that, that's fine. That's my ask.
I don't see. Yeah, I don't see it as in just get Josh to find out these questions to Heiner. It's like look at the map that I already have of Heiner. What were the things that he has that is important but not urgent? Look at the things that he has that are urgent, and then map it over to what Glenn has. Then have that on the map, and then I come up with the questions for you. So I do see it as a format, and I don't want to burden you with my stuff. Right?
I'm asking
you don't want to burden me with yours.
Okay, sorry, I gotta go, buddy. I love you, but I feel like we're going in circles. It's just a very clear ask. Can you?
Yeah. Well, I don't have any specific questions that I want at present that I want to ask Heiner.
In the future, if you do, please let me know.
And in fact, the question is, are we building on my concept of Heiner, or are we giving Heiner a platform to discuss his new book or whatever. So is it like a book tour thing,
both.
like, you know, Michael Shermer's doing,
Both.
which is, you know,
Yeah.
So if I had a question, if I had just one question, just without any of my baggage on it, I would say, you know, how is it going with your quest? That would be my question.
That'll
That would
probably
be
be my
basic
first
question.
question. So you have to say that
Yeah.
helps me right there. Thank you, Colin, because that's it. Okay, I'm gonna let you go. I
Yeah.
got to go talk to my mom and check in because I'm an hour
All right.
late.
Have a good Sunday, dude. Talk to you later.
Happy Saturday. It's Saturday, brother. Cheers.
Yeah, Saturday.
Thank you, Stacy. I don't know if you're still listening all this long, but thank you. Thank you. Cheers.
Talk to you
Thank you,
later.
Sam. Thank you, Colin.